Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to look at some pretty interesting concepts from a manuscript called The Magic of Forgiveness by Gianmichael Salvato. Now, Gianmichael Salvato he's a lot of things. He's an ordained Buddhist contemplative. He's a semi-retired archbishop and an Italian folk magic practitioner.
Wow, that's quite a diverse background. And it sounds like his manuscript is drawing from a really interesting blend of traditions.
Yeah, it is. And one of the most kind of surprising ideas in here is that we are each responsible for all our experiences.
That's really fascinating. It sounds a little bit intense at first.
Yeah, like responsible for everything. What does that even mean? Like, if I spill coffee on myself, is that somehow my fault?
Well, not necessarily in that way. It's not about placing blame on ourselves for every little mishap. It's more about understanding that our experiences are kind of a reflection of our inner world, all of our thoughts and beliefs, and especially all this data that gets stored in our subconscious mind.
Data in our subconscious. That sounds a little techie.
Well, Salvato actually uses the analogy of a hard drive to describe the subconscious.
Okay. I can kind of see that.
Yeah, so imagine your subconscious is this massive hard drive packed with information. And it's all this information that's shaping how you see and interact with the world.
So is he saying that, if my hard drive is full of self-doubt or limiting beliefs or negative thoughts, then those things are going to show up in my life as bad experiences?
Yeah, that's the general idea. But the good news is that we can actually clean up this data and replace it with something more positive and empowering.
Okay, so that's where the magic of forgiveness comes in.
Exactly.
How do we actually go about doing that?
Well, one of the practices Salvato draws on is this ancient Hawaiian practice called Ho'oponopono.
Ho'oponopono.
Yeah, have you heard of it?
I think so.
It's all about reconciliation and forgiveness.
Okay.
And one of the central practices in Ho'oponopono is the repetition of certain phrases.
Phrases like what?
Like, I love you, I'm sorry, and thank you.
Seriously.
Yeah, it sounds pretty simple, right?
It does. But how can something that simple create any kind of meaningful change?
Well, it's not just about the words themselves. It's more about the energy and the intention that we bring to the practice. Salvato describes these phrases as like a mental reset button.
A reset button.
Yeah, they help to clear out that negative data that we were talking about and to reconnect with our true nature.
Okay, so what is our true nature, according to Salvato?
He calls it pure awareness.
Pure awareness.
It's kind of hard to describe in words, but imagine it like a clear, still pool of water.
Okay.
But over time, our thoughts, our beliefs, our experiences, they all create ripples. And these ripples obscure the clarity of the water.
I see.
So Ho'oponopono is like calming those ripples and allowing us to rediscover that underlying stillness.
That's a really beautiful analogy. So by practicing Ho'oponopono
Yeah.
and by clearing out all this negative data, we're essentially creating space for more peace and purpose in our lives.
That makes a lot of sense.
But I'm curious, does Salvato talk about replacing that negative data with anything?
He does. He believes we can actively replace it with what he calls universal truths.
Universal truths.
Yeah, so these are basically positive affirmations and beliefs that can support our well-being and our growth.
So instead of dwelling on past mistakes, we could focus on our strengths and our potential.
Exactly.
So it's like consciously rewriting the code of our subconscious mind.
You got it.
I like that.
And he offers a really powerful example of this from his own life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Salvato was diagnosed with AIDS.
Wow.
But instead of giving in to fear and despair, he actively shifted his mindset towards health and vitality.
Okay.
And he focused on nourishing his body and cultivating positive emotions. And he really doubled down on his spiritual practice.
So what happened?
Well, remarkably, he experienced a complete recovery.
He did.
Yeah, he actually defied medical expectations.
Wow, that's incredible.
Now, he emphasizes that this isn't about denying the reality of illness or hardship.
Great.
It's about changing our relationship to it.
Okay.
So instead of being consumed by fear, we can choose to focus on hope and resilience and the possibility of healing.
So it's not about ignoring our problems, but approaching them from a more empowered perspective.
Exactly.
And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of Salvato's approach, which is his model of the mind. He describes three inner realms: the subconscious, the conscious, and the superconscious.
That's right.
And I'm picturing this like layers of an onion,
Yeah.
each layer influencing the others.
Okay.
So the subconscious, that's the deepest layer. And that's where all that data that we've been talking about is stored.
Right.
And then the conscious mind is where we experience our thoughts and emotions in the present moment.
Exactly.
And then there's this superconscious realm.
Which Salvato describes as our connection to something greater than ourselves.
So like a source of wisdom and intuition and inspiration.
Yeah, it's like this vast ocean of potential just waiting to be tapped into.
So if we can learn to access this superconscious realm, does that mean we can tap into a whole new level of creativity and insight?
That's the idea.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
But it also sounds a little overwhelming.
It can be a lot to take in at first.
Yeah, like where do we even begin?
Well, the key takeaway for now is that you have more power than you realize.
Okay.
You have the power to shape your experiences and to create a more fulfilling life.
So it starts by understanding the connection between our inner world and our outer reality.
Yeah, and recognizing that we have the ability to choose our thoughts and our beliefs and our actions.
That's incredibly empowering. I feel like there's so much more to explore here. I can't wait to dive deeper into the practical applications of these ideas.
Me too. And in the next part, we'll explore specific practices and techniques that Salvato suggests for clearing that negative data and unlocking the magic of forgiveness.
Sounds amazing. Can't wait to...
The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions.
Calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves.
Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures.
To dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there.
To honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being.
Treating everybody without exception.
With absolute justice, equity, and respect.
It is also necessary in both public and private life.
To refrain consistently and empathically from inflicting pain.
To act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest.
To impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody.
And to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies.
Is a denial of our common humanity.
We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately.
And that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion.
We therefore call upon all men and women
to restore compassion
to the center of morality and religion.
To return to the ancient principle
that any interpretation of scripture
that breeds violence,
hatred, or disdain
is illegitimate.
To ensure that youth are given accurate and respectful information
about other traditions, religions, and cultures.
To encourage a positive appreciation of cultural
and religious diversity.
To cultivate
an informed empathy
with the suffering of all human beings,
even those
regarded as enemies.
We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world.
Rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness.
Compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries.
Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential for human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity.
It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable in the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community.
To our deep dive into the magic of forgiveness. In the last part, we talked about the idea of the subconscious mind being like a hard drive full of data, and we explored how that data can actually shape our experiences. Remember, Salvato believes that we can actually clean this data using techniques like Ho'oponopono. Now let's explore some of the practical ways that we can actually apply these principles.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this idea of personal responsibility that Salvato emphasizes. He really seems to be saying that we have a lot more power than we realize to heal ourselves and to change our circumstances.
Yeah, you're picking up on a really important point. Salvato definitely challenges us to step up and recognize the power that we hold within.
So instead of trying to change other people or situations, we should be looking inward and addressing our own thoughts and beliefs.
Exactly. You know, he uses this really helpful analogy of a mirror.
Okay.
He explains that when we perceive a problem in someone else, often it's actually a reflection of something within ourselves that needs attention.
That's a really powerful way to think about it.
It is. So it's about shifting our internal landscape first.
Okay.
And recognizing that our perceptions are always colored by our own past experiences and our beliefs and all that data that's stored in our subconscious.
So by cleaning up our own data, we change the reflection in the mirror.
That's the idea.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do we actually make that shift? How do we move from being controlled by our subconscious data to consciously creating the life that we desire?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I think Salvato suggests that the key lies in cultivating a connection with what he calls divine inspiration.
Divine inspiration.
Yeah, so instead of being driven by our ego's data, We tap into this deeper wisdom that comes from pure awareness.
So we're aligning ourselves with our true nature.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is where the Fivefold Mantra comes in, right?
Yeah, remember we talked about this in the first part. It's, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, namaste.
I remember the phrases, but I'm still a little fuzzy on how repeating them actually creates change.
Yeah. Yeah, it can seem a little counterintuitive, but it's not just about the words themselves. It's more about the vibrational frequencies that those words embody.
Vibrational frequency.
Yeah, you know, everything in the universe is energy.
Okay.
And energy is vibrating at different frequencies.
Okay.
So when we repeat the Fivefold Mantra, we're consciously aligning ourselves with the frequencies of love, forgiveness, and gratitude.
So we're literally changing our energy by shifting our thoughts and our intentions.
Yeah, that's the idea. And as we do this, we start to dissolve the negative energy patterns that are stored in our subconscious, and we begin to attract more positive experiences into our lives.
Okay, so it's not magic, it's energy.
You could say that.
But just mindlessly repeating the mantra isn't enough, is it?
You're right. Salvato actually encourages us to go deeper.
Okay.
To contemplate the meaning behind each phrase, and to connect it to the principles of pure awareness, personal responsibility, and the interconnectedness of all things.
So it's about bringing mindfulness and intention to the practice.
Absolutely.
Okay. I could see how that would make a difference. Now, I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical, but I'm also open to the possibility that there are forces at work that we don't fully understand yet.
That's a healthy approach, I think.
Yeah.
No, Salvato encourages that open-mindedness.
Yeah.
He's not asking us to blindly believe everything.
Okay.
But to be open to exploring these ideas and experiencing them for ourselves.
What other practical techniques does Salvato suggest for clearing negative data and creating positive change?
Well, he talks about a whole variety of practices, drawing on ancient wisdom traditions and modern insights.
Like what?
Well, for example, he talks about something called the Solar Blue Elixir.
The Solar Blue Elixir.
It's basically water that has been exposed to sunlight in a blue glass bottle.
Okay. I've heard of people putting water in sunlight to charge it. But what's so special about the blue bottle?
Well, Salvato explains that the color blue is associated with the throat chakra, which governs communication and creativity. So by solaring water in a blue bottle, we're imbuing it with these qualities and enhancing our ability to express ourselves authentically and to create positive change.
So we can drink this water or what?
Yeah, he suggests drinking it, adding it to a bath, or even spraying it around our homes.
Interesting. It seems like Salvato is blending a kind of spiritual science with everyday practices.
Exactly. And he also talks about the power of sound healing, specifically mentioning Tibetan singing bowls and what he calls the continuum of sound acoustic frequencies.
The continuum of sound acoustic frequencies.
Yeah, he believes that these tools can help restore balance and harmony in our energy field.
So we're using sound vibrations to retune our energy.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You know, he explains that everything in the universe has a natural frequency.
Okay.
And when our bodies get out of tune, we experience disease. Yeah, so sound healing can help us to recalibrate our frequencies and promote well-being.
It's fascinating how he weaves together ancient wisdom and modern scientific understanding.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, Salvato points out that even science is starting to catch up with these ancient practices.
In what way?
Well, he mentions examples of nurses using aromatherapy and cancer centers incorporating sound healing into their treatment plans.
It seems like there's a growing awareness of the interconnectedness of our physical, mental, and energetic well-being.
Definitely. But Salvato emphasizes that these practices are not meant to be magical quick fixes.
Okay.
True transformation requires personal responsibility, inner work, and a willingness to confront our limiting beliefs and patterns.
So he's not advocating a passive approach where we just sit back and wait for the magic to happen.
Or not at all. He encourages us to actively engage with these tools and techniques.
Right.
And to use them as catalysts for our own inner growth.
One practice that really resonated with me was this Buddhist practice of Tomlin that he discusses. It's about mentally taking on the suffering of others and offering them our own peace and happiness.
Tomlin is such a powerful practice of compassion and empathy. And Salvato explains that it's not about literally absorbing the suffering of others, but rather about cultivating a deep intention to alleviate their pain and to offer them love and support.
So it's a way of transforming our own suffering into compassion for others.
Exactly. He even suggests using our own negative experiences as fuel for Tomlin.
Wow.
You know, transforming our personal struggles into empathy and understanding for those facing similar challenges.
That's beautiful. It's a way to connect with the shared humanity of all beings. and to recognize that we're not alone in our struggles.
I love that. And it aligns so perfectly with the core principles of Ho'oponopono: love, forgiveness, gratitude, and a recognition of our interconnectedness.
By cultivating these qualities within ourselves, we're actually contributing to the healing of the world around us.
That's the idea.
Now, Salvato acknowledges that this concept of 100% responsibility can be kind of a tough pill to swallow, especially when it comes to painful experiences.
Right.
But he distinguishes between guilt and responsibility,
Right.
emphasizing that it's not about blaming ourselves for everything that happens to us.
That's an important distinction. It's about recognizing the power we have to choose our responses, even when external circumstances are beyond our control.
So we're taking ownership of our thoughts and beliefs
Yeah.
and understanding how they shape our reality.
Exactly.
So it's not about denying the reality of difficult situations, but rather about choosing how we respond to them.
Yeah, you got it.
I can see how that shift in perspective could be incredibly empowering. Instead of feeling like victims of circumstance, we become conscious architects of our lives.
That's a profound shift, and it's really at the heart of what Salvato calls the magic of forgiveness.
It's about forgiving ourselves and others, releasing the past, and choosing to create a future filled with peace, purpose, and joy.
Beautifully said.
But how do we actually cultivate that level of forgiveness, especially when we've been deeply hurt or betrayed?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's one that we'll explore more deeply in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Salvato offers some really insightful guidance and specific techniques for cultivating forgiveness and releasing resentment. And we'll also dive into the profound practice of spiritual mind treatment, which can help us rewrite those limiting beliefs that often keep us stuck in patterns of suffering.
I'm really looking forward to learning more about spiritual mind treatment. It feels like we're just scratching the surface of this incredible work.
I agree. Salvato's work really offers a treasure trove of wisdom and practical tools for creating lasting transformation in our lives.
Well, I can't wait to discover more of those treasures in the next part.
Yeah.
All right, so welcome back to our deep dive into Gianmichael Salvato's The Magic of Forgiveness. We've talked about a lot of things so far, the power of the subconscious mind, Ho'oponopono, even some pretty out there things like the 0-point wand. But now I'm really curious to learn more about this spiritual mind treatment that Salvato talks about. It sounds like a really powerful way to shift our beliefs and create lasting change.
It really is. And spiritual mind treatment is definitely a core practice in Salvato's approach.
Okay.
He describes it as a method of aligning our thoughts with universal truth and consciously replacing those limiting beliefs with more empowering ones.
So it's not just positive thinking.
Right. It's more than that. It's about tapping into a higher power or a universal intelligence, which he accords to pure awareness.
So we're calling on a greater wisdom to help us transform our minds.
Exactly. And Salvato outlines a 4-stage process for spiritual mind treatment.
Okay.
It starts with recognition. Yeah, recognizing our connection to that higher power, that source of infinite love and wisdom.
So we're acknowledging that we're not alone in this.
Right, we're connected to something much bigger than ourselves.
And then what?
Then we move into the stage of unification.
Unification?
Yeah, this is where we consciously choose to align our thoughts and beliefs with the truth of that higher power.
So we're tuning our minds to a higher frequency.
You could say that. Salvato says it's like tuning our mental radio to the frequency of love, peace, and abundance.
That makes sense.
And then we move into particularization.
Particularization.
Where we get specific about the limiting beliefs or the negative patterns that we want to transform.
So we have to be willing to look at the shadow parts of ourselves.
We do, but it's an essential step because we can't transform what we don't acknowledge.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, so we've recognized our connection to a higher power. We've aligned our thoughts with that power. And we've identified the specific beliefs we want to change. What's next?
The final stage is release. This is where we consciously choose to let go of those old patterns.
Okay.
And we surrender them to the higher power to be transformed.
So it's an act of faith and surrender.
It is. And Salvato says that this is where the real magic happens. Because by releasing our attachment to the old story, we create space for something new and beautiful to emerge.
It's like we're planting a seed and trusting that the universe will help it grow.
Exactly.
Now, does Salvato talk about using spiritual mind treatment for physical healing as well?
He does.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, he shares an anecdote about using spiritual mind treatment to address back pain.
Okay.
And he realized that his back pain was actually connected to some underlying fears.
Like what?
Fears about financial insecurity and a lack of emotional support.
So he wasn't just trying to mask the pain with medication. He was looking for the root cause.
Exactly. And he used spiritual mind treatment to address those underlying fears.
Why?
By affirming his belief in his own abundance and his ability to attract supportive relationships.
And what happened?
Well, as he shifted his beliefs, his back pain gradually subsided.
That's pretty amazing.
It really highlights that interconnectedness of our physical, mental, and emotional well-being.
It does. But I imagine some people might be a little skeptical about all this talk about higher powers.
You're right, and Salvato acknowledges that. He encourages us to approach these practices with an open mind and a willingness to experiment.
Okay.
He even shares his own experiences of questioning whether or not his practices were actually effective, highlighting the importance of staying curious and learning from both our successes and our setbacks.
It makes him seem a lot more relatable.
Right.
Like he's not claiming to have all the answers.
Exactly. He's inviting us to become explorers, to test these ideas out for ourselves and see what works.
So it all comes back to that core principle of personal responsibility.
It does.
Salvato is really empowering us to become active participants in our own healing and transformation.
Yeah.
He's given us a whole toolkit of practices and principles to help us tap into that power. From Ho'oponopono to spiritual mind treatment. From the Fivefold Mantra to the 0-point wand. There are so many different ways to clear negative data, shift our beliefs, and create a more fulfilling life.
Yeah, it's an exciting journey, and it's one that unfolds step by step, moment by moment. Salvato encourages us to approach it with a sense of adventure and curiosity, and a willingness to embrace the unknown.
That's a great note to end on. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the magic of forgiveness, I want to thank you for joining us. It's been a really enriching experience.
Yes.
And if you're feeling inspired to learn more about Salvato's work, you can visit his website at www.inneralchemy.online. You'll find information about his books, workshops, and other resources there. But remember, the real magic begins within you. You have the power to create the life you desire.
So go out there and explore that power. Embrace the journey. And may your path be filled with peace, purpose, and the magic of forgiveness.